Hi, I'm Peg Johnson, owner of Show Clothes Unlimited, also known as home of Sew Your Own Show Clothes. In the previous DVDs, we did chaps and we did shirts, but what I didn't teach you was how to do the applique and the rhinestoning. So that is what this DVD is about. We're going to show you applique, how to cut them out and apply them, and then we're going to move on to rhinestoning your project so you have a completed project. Now, the first thing is, before you start to develop your applique, you need to have a vision of where you want to go with your shirt. Do you want to have an overall applique? Do you want to have little pieces? As a sample, this is one of the Hope shirts that we wanted, the cancer ribbons. And it was just something I wanted. I knew the shirt was going to be pink. I didn't have any input on that, but we needed the white for the contrast. And then we decided on these colors, which are the Hope ribbon colors. So you need a slight vision where to go. Now, for those of you who are not extremely artistic like me, I have to have help getting my appliques. So, and that's really quite easy. You can go to a craft store, a hardware store, and they have all these kinds of really neat applique or stencils that are really made for doing things on your walls. And in quilting, it's your quilting. And there's just so many of them out there available. So kind of think outside the box when you're looking at these things. There's just so many you can use. And you don't have to fill them all in. Use them as a guide. That's what you want to do. Now, another thing that you can do is Hobby Horse has a DVD available. There are 27 or 29 actual appliques on here, the same ones that they use in their store. Suitability has two patterns available. One is actually the appliques and scrolls, and you can cut them apart, rearrange them. You're not stuck using exactly what the pattern says. And then they have another one that is yokes. And again, there's appliques in here that you can use, and you don't have to use them with the yokes, you can use them without. Think about books. Look at children's books. Go to the library. Think outside the box. This is Celtic. They're knots. That's all they are, is knots. And you don't have to be this detailed with your applique, but use it as a guide, a stepping stone to something that you might want to do. I also have a book available. It's called Applique. And in it, there's 17 pages of different appliques that I have actually used on my projects. Then again, I'm thinking outside the box again. This is actually the cover off one of my notebooks. And I just thought this was the neatest little swirl ever. You know, it's cut off over here because of where it was on the book, but if you look, here's one side of it and here's the other side of it. So I certainly can use that. Then there's this applique here that could be used. So it's all a matter of just looking at something and deciding to adapt it to what you want it to do. Now, what do you make your appliques out of? There are quite a few fabrics that you can make applique out of, and we'll go through them here in just a second. This is leather. This is cracked ice leather that I've already cut into an applique that I used in another project. You can see that it's kind of lightweight, kind of wimpy looking when you lift it over your hand, but that's what you want. You want lightweight because you need to sew through this and onto your shirt. You don't want heavy weight, you don't want to hold down your shirt, you don't want to add excess weight to your shirt if you don't have to. This is pleather, which you may not be able to see on the black. It has a backing on it. Comes in several colors. It's a little bit stretchy. And it can look like leather when it's on, and it wears very well, but it is a vinyl, so you might want to be aware of that. Ultra suede. This is Ultra Suede Soft. There is a lighter version that is Ultra Suede Light. Again, very little weight to your applique when it's on your shirt. The weight on your shirts is going to come with the rhinestoning that you put on them. This is a pearlized leather. You can see a little bit how light it is thickness-wise. Just like the cracked ice. This one's just a touch heavier, but I wouldn't want to go any heavier than this one. But this has a nice, pretty finish. It's a shiny finish. Excuse me. This is a metallic. It's still a leather. This one is lambskin, and you're going to use the shiny side. Now, the thing you have to watch with these, with this one and this one, these are dyed. Obviously, animals don't come pink. And because of the dye on the back, you have to watch how you're going to care for your project when you're done. Hand washing, gentle, only where it's dirty. You're going to want to stay away from the leather as much as possible because the dyes can run. And if you have the pink on a white shirt and it runs, you have ruined your shirt. So it's just something to be aware of, be careful of. And yes, a lot of those showmanship shirts out there are not washed. They're hand washed or spot washed. This is another leather. Get it a little bit. Again, this one is actually a split cowhide. Again, it's a lightweight, and you can cut it with scissors. If you can't cut it with scissors, it's too heavy to be using for applique. Our newest toy on the block is a shimmer sheet. This is heat activated. This is the glue side. Draw your design on it. Cut it out. Put it on your project, dry iron with a press cloth, heat it up, and then when you're done, you peel off the clear coating that's on it. And I think you can be able to see the difference between the before and the after. And this will smooth out and be really shiny and will be adhered to your shirt. It's an alternative to the more expensive metallic leathers. For the high-end shirts, if we're talking World Congress, I don't think I would use this. It's more acceptable to use the metallic leathers because of the quality. The higher you go in the show world, the better quality appliques and rhinestones you want to be using on your projects. When you do your appliques, you want to make sure that you do large sweeping circles. You don't want to have tiny little crevices, a whole bunch of these. Except for the shimmer sheets, you're going to be stitching these down. So you have to take into consideration where you're going to have to stitch. So if you have tons of these little tiny swirls that you can barely get into with your machine, it's going to take time. You can do it, but it's going to take you time and it's going to take a lot more effort. You want to stick with larger sweeping things like this. Just like with the ribbon, there's no short angles on that one, other than the ordinary regular points. Now, sizing your project. When you get these, they may or may not be the size you need to use them. So you cannot use a humongous applique on a child's shirt, and you don't want to use something really tiny on an adult shirt. So everything has to be in proportion to your shirt. The best way to do that is to trace it onto paper. And then use either trace this on the graph paper or onto like poster board, and then put it on a copier and auto size it. If you have any kind of drawing program or anything like that, you can size it with that. Once you have it sized the way you want it, lay it on your pattern, make sure it really is going to work for you and it's going to work well. Then you can go ahead, save a copy of it, and have the copy to work with that you're going to cut out and actually use, but keep a copy for your library for later on so you don't have to go through all those steps again if you want to reuse it. You might want to make sure that you choose your colors before you get too involved. Make sure that the colors you choose are going to go with your shirt. Do you want complementary colors? Do you want contrasting colors? All of that affects what you do with your shirt and your rhinestoning. Because now you have to take into consideration whether you're going to rhinestone it, whether you're going to use large rhinestones or small rhinestones. If you're doing something like this, are you going to rhinestone inside this? Like if you're going to do the rose, are you going to rhinestone inside of it? Are you going to rhinestone the stem? Or are you going to outline it? On some of these other projects, you could actually put a Rivoli in here, which is a very large rhinestone. You could put several smaller ones around it. There's just so many things you can do. So kind of sit down and just kind of rough guess what you want to do. There are many people who can do this on the fly. They start and they go right straight through and they never pre-plan any of it. I'm the person that's got to sit down and know where I'm going to go when I get there. This is the applique I've decided to show today. As you can see, there are multiple sizes here. And you can use any of these from a very small to all the way out to here. This is one that's kind of nice because it's already sized for you. And you can just go ahead and trace whatever you want. Now I went ahead and I traced it and I cut it out and I cut out the centers of it. Now I didn't have to go ahead and do that. I just did for visual purposes. What I will actually do is I will either use this to trace directly onto my shimmer sheet, if that's what I'm going to do. And I would simply just take a regular pen and draw around it. And you're not going to be able to see this. You may have to use a marker so that it shows. I don't think the camera will be able to see that. It's not dark enough. But you don't, as long as you can see it to cut it out, that's the important part. Now on the other types of fabrics, especially with the ultra suede, I'm going to use a temporary adhesive spray. Make sure that you have your extra piece of applique and take it to a place where you have newspaper, what they call a shadow box. It's a box that you put the newspaper into, you lay your applique into it, and then spray it. And the reason you do that is because this spray goes all over the place. And you don't need to do a large spray, like shh, just a quick one. All you're doing is temporarily adhering this to your ultra suede so that you can cut it out, because you're not going to trace it on here. You just apply it and you're going to actually cut it right out. Now for leather, you don't want to write on leather. On some of the smoother backed ones, you can trace it, you can use a grease pen, you can do a China marker. On the smoother ones, you can use the temporary spray, or you can go ahead and use what they call wonder tape. This will hold your applique on here temporarily. It'll peel back off, but it keeps it from shifting because you can't put pins into this and into the leather, and it's very difficult to put the pins into the ultra suede. Now I explained earlier how to use the shimmer sheet and apply it. Now this is one of the techniques that I use. Instead of doing each one individually, I will do a square or a portion of the background fabric and go ahead and apply the shimmer sheet to it, because then I'm going to cut it out. Now I will do the same thing with the leather. If I have a bunch of the same size applique, I'm not going to trace each one individually. I'm going to put this on the back, I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to spray the whole sheet on there, because then I can go ahead and use it. It's already stuck down on there. I already know how much space it's going to take, and I can just go ahead and cut it out. Yes, I'll peel it off afterwards and destroy it. That's why you want the extra copies when you get going. Now, there's one trick to leather you really need to understand. This is layered. When you cut your applique, you need to make sure your scissors are right straight up and down. If you cant them this way, I'm not sure we'll be able to see it on this one because it's kind of a thin leather. But if you cut it, you know, with sliding it like that, when you get close up, you'll be able to see this raw underside. You don't want that on your applique. And it doesn't show so much on the thin stuff like this, but if you get any bit thicker, it's very definitely going to show, and it's going to affect how you sew it down. What you want to do is make sure your scissors are straight up and down. This is probably one of the few applique cutouts that I will cut directly on a table so that I make sure my scissors are straight up and down. Now the nice thing about the others is that I can actually pick them up and turn them around and roll them. Like I said, I appliqued this down, I ironed it down. I'm going to cut them apart to make it easy to use. This is what's really nice. As long as you leave your space between them, so now I have two. Now, I do this by eye, but if you're not sure, you can go ahead and take a measuring tape and, you know, with something really light like a chalk marker, go ahead and do some lines around here so that you got something to follow. And just start and take advantage of your scissors. Basically, you're going to hold your scissors still and swirl the fabric. You see my scissors aren't moving other than as I'm shutting them. Now you notice I'm not going into that indentation right there because I don't want to at this point. Just allow the scissors to follow those swirls. And don't be afraid to cut in and get rid of anything that's in your way. That's the whole point of being able to do appliques like this. Now there are machines that you can do this with. There is a Cricut and Pazzle. Some of the other machines that are available are much more expensive. They are the clickers and the rollers, where you have to buy individual dies for every size, every shape that you want. You can invest thousands of dollars into those. The Cricut and Pazzle are less expensive. They're in the $500 range and are more suited for the home, and they are both rated to cut up to leather. They are both rated for leather. So the shimmer sheet, the ultra suede, any other fabric that you use, as long as it doesn't fray, you should be able to use on those. Most of the people I know do hand cut theirs. I hand cut mine. You get a nicer cut with less work, and especially if you're only doing one or two shirts. If you're producing hundreds of shirts, then you might want to look at investing in these other machines. But for one or two, and especially if you use the same design over and over again, then you don't need to invest that kind of thing. Now if I wanted, I could get trimmer closer on this. Now you see I left that. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to go the opposite way. Again, I'm rolling my scissors. I'm sorry, I'm rolling the applique and holding my scissors. Now I can get that tighter, I can go tinier, I can do what I want. Now there are some other appliques that you may not want to get into this spot. When you're layering them, you may want to layer some. In this page I have two pieces. I've got to call it B1 and B2. The background piece is going to be totally solid. There's going to be no incuts, no indents, or anything. For the B2, which is going to be a different color, so I have a contrast going on here, I'm going to go ahead and, if you can't get your scissors into these little nooks here, switch to smaller scissors. The smaller and sharper they are, the tinier spots you can get into. And then I will take this one, set it on top of this one, stitch that down, and then that's ready to go onto my shirt. The same idea is done with this one. The bottom, the layered piece is solid. This one has the swirls and scrolls and the cuts into it. To try to layer two of these with all that detail is just going to be muddy and it's going to be difficult. Where this way you get a nice clean picture. And when you're done, this is basically what you're going to end up with. You have the outside of one color and the inside of your other color. Stitch this one to this one first, and then you're ready to stitch this one to your shirt when you layer it, when you're ready to layer it. There are many ways to put your applique onto your project. One thing I'm going to ask you not to do is please do not use the hot glue for crafts. You will end up with very hard applique spots on your shirt, and it doesn't necessarily hold, and you know how horses are rough on us, and well, it's rough on our clothes too, and the craft glue is not going to work. I do know people who use Fabri-Tac or Fabri-Glue, that type of thing behind them, but again, I have found that I get hard spots, so I don't like that. I always stitch down my appliques. You're not supposed to need to stitch down these shimmer sheets. You should be able to apply them directly to your shirt. I like the look of stitch down, so I'm going to do that. Now there's a good discussion that goes on is when is the proper time to apply your applique? I'm a person who will assemble my shirt all the way up except for the underarm seams and the side seams. This still gives me a nice flat finish to work on, but my shirt is almost done. I know a lot of people who wait, and while it's all cut out, just like this is only partially done, they will apply their applique to everything before they assemble anything. That's great, and it works for them. The other way works for me. So you have to do this, you have to experiment and learn what it is that works for you and what doesn't. Now, with applying your applique, you have to decide where you want to put it. You know, what kind of angle do you want to put on it? Do you want it to come from the bust out to the shoulders? Do you want to make the shoulders look wider? Then go this way. If you need to minimize that, then you might want to go here. And just be very careful where certain points land on women. We don't need headlights highlighted. And especially if you're going to use large rhinestones. You don't want them at the point of the bust. So you may want to put one up here, you know, maybe down here. Sometimes you have an applique that you want to cross the center. You can use the same pattern for the front and the back, except wherever your zipper goes, that piece of applique has to be slightly longer. And that's because of the zipper. If you cut, we're going to say that this is going to meet in the middle. And this is stitched contrast so that you can see this. If I want this applique to come across the shirt like this, and this would come to a point up here, I can stop it where that stitching is for my zipper. That's one way of doing it. If you do it this way, you can use the exact same piece for the front and the back, and because you've already you've got this. Some people like this, and some people don't. The alternative is to take your pattern, cut it, and add your 1/2 inch seam allowance. Then before you put your zipper in, you attach this to your pieces, put your zipper in, and if you do it correctly, these will meet in the middle. But that's why you have to decide how you're going to put your applique on. Because this can be done. It can be matched absolutely perfectly across the center. You just have to pay attention to what you're doing. The third way of doing this is kind of the way I do it, honestly. I will put the zipper in because I want to make sure that my top, my bottom, everything is lined up perfectly. I seem to have the tendency to put this on and it looks really good. I put my zipper on and it's going to be like this. And that's not what I want. So I have learned that I either extend this with the 1/2 inch seam allowance and sew it into my zipper to start with, or again, I still add the 1/2 inch seam allowance. But then after I have my shirt together, I get to play with this. I can decide if I want this up here, or maybe, you know, maybe I need to add another piece and, you know, go here. What kind of angle do I want? But with that extra 1/2 inch, once I've decided where I want it to go, I will actually undo the stitching here, peel it back, put that in, and stitch it back down here. And when I am done, it will look exactly like one of the other versions of the applique that I did. In order to apply these to your project, you're going to have, I already talked about the glue. I am a huge user of the temporary adhesive spray. I use that for almost everything I do. I like it. It's movable. I can spray this, I can set it down, pick it up, set it down, pick it up, and I can fuss with it till I'm totally satisfied. You can use the Wonder Tape for this. You can use Wonder Under. There are some people who use Steam-A-Seam and Wonder Under. I don't use them with success. I have a tendency to get bubbles with them. There's other people who use them absolutely perfectly and they love it. So that's just a variety of the things that you can do. The temporary spray, the tape, or the Steam-A-Seam Wonder Under type thing. Once you have that on, then you're going to have to stitch this down. And it's very easy to do. I use my zipper foot because I get to see the edges. When I'm stitching, I can get right up here on this edge. This is my foot from my machine. And because with this, I can sew right along this edge of this foot. And with it, I can stitch right along everything I want to do. You might have to take it out and turn it around, but by using the temporary spray, if you got ultra suede, you can pin it, and in order to pin it, you can go under the fabric, over the ultra suede, and into the fabric again. But don't be afraid to just stitch as far as you can stitch with it. Stop. And it's okay to go down and around and inside, and then back up and around. Some people would prefer to do a zigzag. I have done that, and if you do a zigzag, then you're going to go just enough to be outside your applique and just enough to be inside your applique. This is why you have to have a fabric that doesn't fray, because you've got to be able to do those tiny stitches without shredding what you're working on. And you can go ahead and you can do a tiny zigzag back and forth. I prefer the straight stitch. I like the way the straight stitch looks. That is what is on this one. And you can see where I crossed through the center. You can't see the stitching here because black on black. And because it's foil, it shows just a touch, but that is a pink. All right, I showed you how to do it manually by tracing it out on here. I have actually gone ahead and put an applique on my shirt. I have decided to do this at an angle. I don't want it to go across the center. I'm going to do this. I'm going to match the other side, and then my back is going to come into a point and with something in the center of my back. So I'm going to show you how I stitch this. I get my needle just as close to that outside edge as I possibly can. And I have almost a basting stitch on this. It depends on how short your angles are, how long your stitch is. The tighter your angles, the smaller your stitch. But where I've got long sweeping stuff like this, then I'm going to go ahead Now there is another way I could do this. You notice I stopped up here and went back out around the curve. I can actually just go ahead and go across. Because you have to stitch both the inside and the outside anyway, so it doesn't matter how you want to do it. Always remember to lift the presser foot when you're turning it. Then there will be points where you're going to have to come in, lift your needle up, go ahead and move over here. With my machine, I don't have to cut my thread to do this. Your machine, you may have to, because I have to go around this center. But this one, I can do a sweep here and take the outside. Now by lifting that up and sliding that over like I did, I have actually successfully sewn both the insides and the outsides of each of these appliques, so I don't have to go back and do the center one all by itself. Now you can see where I wasn't very close right here, so I will actually take that out, that stitching out, and go back and redo this. So, because I want this edge smooth, see how there's a chip there? I'm going to go back and trim that. I'm going to take the stitching out, and I'm going to take and sew this so it's nice and neat like the rest of this is. Jumping back a little bit, this was a Hobby Horse Janie shirt, and this one was not assembled, or was partially assembled, I should say. This seam and this seam was not done, so I could actually lay this shirt out flat and went ahead and put the appliques. Now you notice how I interlinked the appliques, and I missed a stitching here, so I got to go back and do that. But this is just one of the ideas that you can do. This is a combination of the shimmer sheet and ultra suede. It's limited by your imagination. Now there's another type of applique that we can do. I talked once a little bit ago about the overlapping applique, where you had the background and then the front, and these were two different colors. Well, there's another thing that we can do. Say that I want to make several layers of this, where I want black, white, black, white, black, white. So I'm going out into a huge diamond that might cover the entire back of a shirt or the entire front. The easiest way to do it is not the way I just did this one. This one, I actually cut out the diamond and applied it to the backing. That was silly of me. What I should have done was cut out the center, the very center, my smallest diamond in the color that I want it to be. Then I should have used the same technique I used on the other ones, where I laid the black on a square of white. Using my measure, cut around the white. Stitch the black to the white. Take the white, lay it on the black. Now I'm going to stitch the white on the black, and again I'm going to measure and cut, and I will have created a multi-layered, progressively larger applique to use on a shirt, jacket, sleeve. And don't forget to do your sleeves. Your sleeves need to reflect what the rest of your shirt is. So if you have swirls in the front, you want swirls in the sleeve. Sometimes you want them to stop at the wrist, at the elbow. And that's because in showmanship, when you bend your elbow, do you want to be bending your applique? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes you only want the applique down here at the bottom. In this instance, I wanted it to reflect and balance out the top of your shirt. Now, there's another type of applique that you can use, and it's actually an overlay, but a lot of people have asked about this technique. And this is where you take one fabric and lay it over another fabric. You don't do the intricate cutting, but you're doing this for effect. And a lot of that effect is really popular right now is lace overlay, where you take a very pretty lace and put it over your project. The simplest way, and it's not as hard as it looks. Now there's a couple things you can do. You can take advantage of the scalloped boundary, and if you want to make that across your shirt front or back, I would be careful doing it at an angle because of the bias. You don't want it to stretch. And maybe you don't want to worry about that at all. Maybe you want to do your own thing. And you're going to cut this to go into a V. Or maybe you want an entire overlay. Maybe you want this over your entire shirt. So you get a nice poppy looking effect. It's very easy to do. You take the same pattern that you're using for your shirt and cut your lace out of it. Then you're going to take and you're going to spray this with your temporary adhesive spray. I told you I use that all the time. It's my go-to thing to do. And I spray the front, the good side of my shirt, and then I will take the same lace piece, same pattern piece, lay it over it, and smooth it down. Don't stretch it, don't pull it, smooth it. Once you've done that, and make sure you go down, go all the way down, make sure it matches up. Then once you do that, you sew this as if it was one piece. You don't count it as a top and a bottom. You count it as one piece totally. Sew that together, and you will get this effect. Now, this fabric didn't fray, but I put a trim on it just to make it look better. You can do the same thing when you do the lace. If you're up here, you can put some trim here. Whatever you do for your body, do the same for your sleeves. And that will help you out. All right, this shirt is a kind of a combination of all of the techniques that I've mentioned previously in the video. This is a base shirt. This is the overlay. This was lambskin with the overlay. This was a cracked ice single applique. As you can see here, we have black over silver, so there's a layered applique. This one down here, again, is a layered applique. And you can just see by the placement of them how it highlights the different parts of the shirt. It's up to you how you put these on. It has to be aesthetically pleasing to you. It doesn't have to please anybody else. As long as you're happy with the result, that is all that's important. But this just shows you how you can combine all those techniques and come up with one fantastic shirt. You've already got your shirt done. You're ready to embellish it. You've got your applique on if you're going to use it, or you're going to use rhinestones to just highlight the shirt collar and cuffs. So now you got to learn about rhinestones. There are crystals and rhinestones, and the difference between them basically is the quality. So I'm going to use the term interchangeably, and forgive me for that. The purists will beat me up for it. But the thing is, it's sparkly that you're going to put on your shirt. Well, there's tons of sizes, and that is one of the things that you need to start learning about if you're going to successfully embellish your shirt. Not all sizes are the same or look the same. And you can combine, you can do crystals, you can do crystal AB, You can combine sizes. It's all up to you and your imagination. And that's the great part about this, is you can take the same crystals as somebody else, apply them differently, and it's all you. Crystals, rhinestones, are generally sold in a gross, and a gross is 144 stones. So the next thing we do is we're going to take a look at the sizes. I have a scattering here, so we're going to give you a visual. These are 16s. Now, honestly, I don't use anything less than a 16 because I don't like working with them. As you can see, as I put the 16s next to this ruler, I can get quite a few of them in that 1 inch. The next size up is a 20. And you can see that I can get a little bit fewer down here. Now you might notice that a few of these are giving off a little more color than the others. And that's because some of these are crystal and some of them are crystal AB. These little babies right down here, these are ABs. They have 2 more cuts in the head of them, and that allows them to reflect more light, kind of like a prism. And when you use them, they will actually pick up more color around them. I don't like them on black because I don't think it's worth the extra cost for them. But if you want to make some colors pop, they come in really handy. So we've got the 16s and the 20s. The next size up is 30s. And you can see how, as the sizes increase, the amount that you can get per inch decreases. So this is something you have to keep in mind when you're rhinestoning a jacket or a shirt. Most shirts, if you're using the 16s or the 20s, are going to take about 10 gross. And that sounds like a lot, but given today's show jackets in the Congress world, that's nothing. There could be 20 gross on those. If you're going to do a collar and a cuff, you're going to use about 2 gross on the collar and another 2 gross on the 2 cuffs together. And that, again, we're talking about these. And there's nothing saying you can't interchange these. You can interchange these totally. I don't believe I have the next size, which is a 40, a 44, and then 48. So then we jump to the larger size. And you can actually go a little bit higher, larger in size. So that'll kind of give you a visual as to the different rhinestones. Now, not all rhinestones or crystals are available in all colors. Sometimes when you get into these larger sizes, your colorization is limited. If you don't know what color you want to use, there's a handy dandy little chart that we can get. It looks like this, and it has this lift up layer, and you slide your fabric underneath, and then you match your fabric to the stone. Once you've identified the stone you want to use, say it's that one right there, pull it out, and I have selected the jonquil. It's a really handy guide. It's nice to have. Changes every couple of years because they get new rhinestones in and discontinue a few colors, but this is really handy. One thing that we need to take into consideration is how do you want to apply your rhinestones? You can apply them with glue. You can use the bedazzler, which is an oversized stapler type thing that uses the rim sets that goes down through. If you're doing leather, then you probably want to go ahead and use the rim sets because it goes through the leather and it holds much better. The stapler, the bedazzler, cramps the rhinestones underneath the fabric and puts a good grip on it. If you use the Tiffany, which is the reverse, the prongs come up through the fabric and then grip onto the rhinestone. If a horsehair catches in one of the prongs, it can pull it loose and release it, and then you lose the stone. And the reason I don't have anything to show you that is because I haven't used a bedazzler in probably 6-7 years. I don't even have them anymore. I can still get them. I have a few people who want to use them, or they use the commercially one. You know, those who do them for a living will purchase a commercial one with a hand press and everything else so that they can go through it much faster than just a single step. The other two ways, I said the glue on, and then there are hot affix. All the rhinestones are called flatbacks, and that's because when you turn them over, their bottoms are flat. And it can be kind of confusing because both hot affix and the glue-on are called flatback. Generally, in talking, when we say flatback, we're talking about ones that need to be glued on, and we call the others hot affix because they require the hot affix gun to put them on. We said that the flatbacks had to be glued, and you can tell the difference in them by looking at the bottoms. If I get this one to turn over, there we go. This one is just plain silver. There's nothing on it. This one requires a glue. This one has a copper backing. Sometimes it's going to be gray. It depends on which company makes them and when they come out. As they change the different grades and change the different glues, then this color may change. But this is heat activated glue. It is already on the stone. You don't buy something different. You don't dip the stone in anything. It is heat activated glue and requires the wand or an iron, and I'll show you that process later on, in order to affix it to your project. Some people will say that one method is better than the other for staying and longevity. What I have discovered is that properly applied, they are equal. And the reason I say properly applied is because a lot of times people don't use the correct glue. They don't wait for the glue to set, or they don't put enough glue or too much glue on their project. With a hot affix, they have the same problem, is that they aren't patient enough to wait for the glue to get hot enough to reach the point where it needs to be in order to apply it to your project. So now that I've brought that up, let me show you a few of the styles that are available. Now, as I put these on here, you can see the difference. This one's an AB. See how it has different coloring? And then this is a crystal. And they come in different sizes. Now, as you can see, these have holes in them. And these are the sew-on ones. Eventually, the stones get to a size where they're too heavy for either glue or the hot affix to hold them on. And all of these are available in multiple sizes. Not all of them are available in multiple colors. It just depends on the size and the shape that you're requesting. So these generally have to be ordered ahead of time. One thing I forgot to mention was the difference in the quality of the different rhinestones. Swarovski is the highest level of grade and with the most shine. That is a brand name. The next is the Preciosa, which I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's like one grade down. It's like with diamonds, there's a difference in grading. And then you have acrylics. And you can also go to plastics. Again, the higher the level of showing you do, the more important it is to have the high quality rhinestones. However, you can interchange these, mix and match them to cut your cost, and that is the point of having sew your own clothing, is that you can be on your budget and you can save and you can do this on your own. So this is what you can keep in mind, is that you can intermix them and that there are multiple grades available. If you're happy with the shine of the acrylic or the cut glass, that's fine. You might want to know that there are lead-free. Every one of these has lead in them. You might want to know that there are lead-free rhinestones available. So if you're doing something for a child, and if you're not doing show clothing and you're doing for something for anyone that's an outfit that might be worn by someone 12 years of age or under, you really should be using the no lead rhinestones because of safety. It's considered, if they ingest it and if they ingest enough, there is a risk of lead poisoning. Now, I doubt that there is much risk actually with a couple of rhinestones, but the law was intended for when we had the toys for children that came over that were painted in lead-based paint and the children chew on them. So unfortunately, or fortunately for us, the rhinestone law extended to, the lead-based paint law extended to the rhinestones. So if you do anything commercially, if you're selling these clothes, you need to be aware of this, because if the article of clothing might be worn by a child 12 years and under, even if you didn't design it for them, you are required to use no lead crystals or certified low lead. There's two that are available, certified low lead and certified no lead. And it's just something that if you're in the business of sewing, you need to be aware of. So going back to my different sizes of rhinestones, shapes, colors, sizes, this is just something to give you an overall view of all the things that you can do. You can purchase ready-made, I don't know if you want to call this one applique. This one's actually sequins. There are a few rhinestones on this. There are places available. I don't carry these. I can get them. Any store that does skating costumes, ballerina costumes, things like that, they'll have these available. And they're kind of handy because all you do is stitch them down. If you don't want to go the trouble of designing your own applique. Now, where do you get the designs? Well, remember when the appliques, I said go into the store, into the quilting section or into the paint section. Well, look what I've got. I can use, this is small enough, I can use this on a collar or cuff. And this is large enough, I could use it on the body of my shirt, or I can enlarge it and use it on the body of my shirt. Here's a nice whoa, can't see that one. Here's a nice simple one. And you can ignore the spots in between. What you're after is the basic design going through here. Now, you're not going to lay this on your shirt and hope that you can keep it in one spot. What you're going to do is you're going to use a chalk pencil. I have a couple more here that just walked away. These are all chalk. Oops, I'm sorry, I lied. That one's a chalk. These are China markers. This is a soluble pen. You can use any of these to lay your applique down on your project. I actually clip it. I use the little binder clips. And because you won't be able to see it with a white pencil, I'm going to use a pen. And I will draw a chalk line on my shirt where I want this to go. Now you can see I'm not being very neat. And that's okay. All I'm after is a guideline. Because then what I'm going to do, imagine that with chalk, is now I'm going to use my rhinestones and cover up my line. And maybe I decide I want a big one. This is why it's fun, because you can play with this. And you can do this without ever putting your rhinestones stuck down. You know, these aren't stuck down. I'm moving them around. One thing I would recommend, though, is when you're playing with this, is take some pictures so that later on you can come back and say, oh yeah, I like that one, or oh, that was a bad idea. But if you have them, you don't have to recreate the wheel every time you want to create a project. You've already got it. Save the pictures. But this just gives you an idea. And because this is chalk or soluble, you can just brush it away, and it's no big deal. There is one more method of applying rhinestones that I forgot to cover, and that is called a transfer sheet. If you have a design that you want to recreate multiple times on the shirt and you want it exactly the same every time, then this is what you're going to do. You're going to take your design like I just did, and this time you're going to trace it on paper. Go ahead and make sure that you can see it. You can use anything you want to because this is your print. And you're going to take and tape this down. Seriously, tape this down so it doesn't move. Then you're going to take transfer paper. Now this is a 2-part paper that peels apart. This is just a, it sticks real well. This is sticky right here. And this is just the backing. So I'm going to, hopefully, peel this apart. Believe me, I don't like this stuff. It doesn't like me. But you're going to put this down, sticky side up, on your design. Now you're going to want to tape that down too because you saw how it stuck to me real well. And I would tape both top and bottom, just as long as you stay out of your print area. But what you want is to make sure that this doesn't move. Then what you're going to do is you must use how to fix rhinestones for this. You cannot use the other kind. It doesn't work. And you're going to take your rhinestones and wherever this is, you're going to put them on here upside down. Why are you not sticking? So that they stick and create your design. If you're going to space your rhinestones out, then you're going to want to mark each of these. If you're going to be changing colors, you're going to want to mark that. And there's no problem with it because this is your pattern. You can write all over it. It's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to do anything. Once you have your rhinestones on here, and you have your design done, then you're going to lift this up. Now, if you're not going to use this for a day or two, put your backing back on it and preserve it, because otherwise this is going to stick to anything it comes in contact with. But if you're ready to go do your project, then you lift this up and you turn it over. And can you see the rhinestones have adhered in the positions that I put them. You're going to put this on your project, household iron with a press cloth, 10 to 15 seconds. The heat will go through this acrylic. It will heat the rhinestones on the back, and then your design will be on your shirt. And you're going to repeat that as many times with new sheets as you have applique to do. And that is how you can get consistency if you're required to do the same pattern over and over and over in multiple places or on multiple shirts. If you have a team or something that you're doing and shirts that you're doing and you have got to have the appliques in the exact same spot every time, then this is probably what you're going to want to do. It just makes your life a whole lot easier. Now, how to get those rhinestones on. I'm going to pull this off and get it out of our way. Remember this? Well, we're going to rhinestone it. And we're going to decide what we want to do. Sometimes people like something large in the center. Maybe you like that. This is why you have to experiment a little bit. You have to decide what it is you want to do. I've seen configurations where they use 2 or 3 of a size and then move up to the next size. Now, obviously I would use same colors or coordinating colors. And you notice I just did this on the inside of it. There's nothing that says you can't do the outside of it. Maybe I only want rhinestones on the outside of it. And yes, I sit here and play with this for a while before I actually do my own. I know people who can just jump right in there and go rhinestone, and they're just a happy little larks, and they're way better at it than I am. Don't be afraid to do strange things. You can repeat that. Well, this one's a little bit big, but if I had a smaller one, we might be able to do that. Maybe I just like that there. Now, obviously, these are sew-ons, so we'll have to get to the sew-ons later on. But the point is to just go ahead and decide what it is you want to do. And then kind of map it out so you got a rough idea so you can do it. If you can do it on the fly, do it. And the best thing, if you got a teenager in the house, turn them loose on it. They don't have any inhibitions, and they're good to go with it. Now this is one of multiple ways to do the glue on. My tools are one of two types of glue. No preference. Everybody has their own preference. We can do this technique, and we can do this technique, which I'll show you in a second. The first is actually using a syringe. Now, any of us that have horses already have syringes at home. Make sure it's clean, and you can just reuse the same thing. This is a blunted off needle, so you might want to be careful who's using this. You're not going to hurt anybody. You're not going to inject anything with it, but it does hurt if you get stuck with it. And the way to use this is to pour a couple of cc's of the non-white glue, is for the best way of explaining it, the E6000. This is industrial strength, and you're going to pour, and no, I'm not going to actually do it. You're going to pour, you know how when you open it up, see how it goos out? If you're really good, you can go ahead and create dots on your fabric. But you see I get strings. Actually, it's not even coming out now, but if I squeeze, it's going to come out. So if you fill this syringe just to 1 or 2 cc's, you start controlling your flow of the E6000. You put your syringe together, make sure you have the air out of it. And then what you're going to do with this is you're going to make dots along the edge of your, with the plunger. And if you get too much glue there, you can just hold it, pull the plunger back, and it's going to pull that glue back out, which is kind of neat. This is a pick stick. It has wax on the end of it, so same thing can be accomplished with a number 2 pencil and a piece of putty. Its whole purpose is to be sticky and to pick up your rhinestone. So you're going to take this, the sticky end, and you're going to just, you don't have to beat up on the stone. You're just going to touch the top of the stone, pick it up, and hopefully I put enough glue here that it will stick. And I shouldn't have to touch it, but the glue's not sticking. And it will come off my pick stick. The glue is stronger than the pick stick and will come off just like that did. Now, caution with the E6000 is you do need to use this in a well-ventilated room. It's just a caution that I want to give you. Another alternative is what they call the white glues. This is just one of many that are available. You can use this straight from the tube. Steady hand. Whoop. But that is what happens to me. Now, I don't know if you can see it very well, but I have a quite a large glob there, smaller glob there, and a teeny glob there. So I have created a problem for myself by doing this. This is way too much glue. So my only salvation for this is going to be take something and pick it up and try to move it down the line and try to do the best that I can. Now I believe if I read the instructions, I can also use a damp cloth to get this excess glue gone, but that is one way of working it. The alternative to that is to pour the white glue into one of these containers. Pop the lid back on. Maybe. And again, just like with the E6000, you go spoosh, 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 spoosh. And in this instance, where I had way too much glue, a little bit of pressure, lift up, it's going to suck the glue back up in there. Little nice. It's just a really good way to be able to control your glue flow. Now, I've just got glue sitting there. Again, we're going to pick up our rhinestones. You notice I got them with the heads up. I'll just barely touch that. But see, if you get the glue globs the right size, you can just whip right on down through here. Now, if for some reason it's not quite right, you use that other end of your stick and you just move it around till you're happy with it. Now you can see on these two glues, see how there's way too much glue on here? I'm going to come back in with my pick stick and get rid of that excess glue. I'm also going to take a damp cloth, which is why I've got Ultra Suede I'm using here, to get rid of that excess glue. That's way too much glue. You do need to have enough glue to grab onto the bottom of the stone, but you don't want so much glue that you've got a glob. And the nice thing about this particular glue is that it dries clear. So that's fine. The E6000 dries clear, and I believe all three of the white glues dry clear. Now, we have another cool method of applying the rhinestones, and that is with a hot affix bond. These come, they're electronic, plug it in, turn it on, and the beautiful thing about the new models is they're balanced. I don't have to worry when I set it down that it's going to tip and burn things. The old model was not balanced like that, and I can guarantee you I have a burn hole in every mat that I own. If you're worried about this, get a cup or a saucer or something. Quite often I'll have 3 or 4 of these going because of the different tip sizes. This comes with 8 different tips. Six of them have a concave in them. This is for picking up your rhinestone. I should have the 20 on the stone that I'm heating up. But this allows you to use some of the smaller sizes. Now, once in a while you're going to get into a large stone that is heat activated, and that's what these flat tips are for. But there's 8 of them for you to use. And we're still waiting. It takes about a minute for that to heat up. So while I'm waiting for that to heat up, I'll go back to, just for a caution on the glued on ones that I've done here. The glue has to dry. So try not to move your project for at least 2 hours. Then for best, it's 24 hours. And some of them, read your directions. It could take up to 3 weeks before you're allowed to wash the product. Now that is another thing to keep into consideration, is how are you going to treat this afterwards? Because like we said in the beginning, with the applique, some of it will bleed and you won't be able to wash it. Now when you start adding these rhinestones, and it doesn't matter whether you have hot affix or glue on, guess what? You cannot dry clean it. You're going to have to spot wash it, hand wash it. Okay. Once again, and notice that I got rhinestones that have a backing. Oh, that one's not. But you can tell instantly. One of two things will happen. Okay, see the dark gray? This is a different brand, but it still has the heat affix. And you'll be able to tell instantly because when you put this down, the stone's not going to stick. I've arranged the rhinestones just anywhere where it's easy for you to get to them. If you want them over to the right, if you want them to the left, whatever, it doesn't matter. Make sure you have the correct tip on the end for the size stone you're going to use. They're scribbled on there or scratched on there, but you need some young eyes or a magnifying glass to see them. They're that tiny. So you just simply take your wand when it's hot, put it over your stone. Just touch your stone. Don't beat it up. And it will pick it up. And then you're going to watch that stone. And this glue is going to change color. It's going to get wet looking. And it's just going to start to bubble. And when it gets to that bubble point, which it is, there's two ways you can do this. You can turn it over and set it right straight down. And see how that came right off of it? That is one way. This works 99 out of 100 times. The 100th time, that stone's going to flip out of this end and go on a trip of its own where it wants to go. So the next time we're going to do a different method. We're going to start the same. Going to pick this up. See, I barely touched it. We're going to let it heat. And you usually count about 10 or so. The atmosphere in your room does affect it. If you have a fan blowing, if you have the air conditioning on, if you have a window open with a breeze, that all affects the timing on this. Now, notice how I'm going to do this just a touch different. I'm going to pick up my project. And you know, look at the angle I have my rod at. And I'm going to come over here and I'm just going to touch my project. Now, while this is still hot, you've got just about a half a second to move it. Anything more than that, you're going to end up with a glue slide. So be very careful and exact where you want it. And try not to get the tip on the ultra suede too much because this will change the texture of the ultra suede. It doesn't burn it, but it does change the texture because ultra suede is man-made. Now, in the event that your stone sticks in this wand, now you see how quickly this does. I can do a gross of this, the hot affix, in an hour. I can only do a half a gross in an hour. I have watched other people do it. They are like super swift by using the poofy thing for the glue and the pick stick. They're whizzes. So the whole thing is just a matter of what you like to do. Now these stones have been coming out very well and I've had no problem with them. I'll show you what to do when it doesn't come out. If you by chance push too hard, whoops, when you're picking this up, when it's hot, it's not going to pull out of your gun, out of your wand. So what we're going to do is say that this one doesn't want to come out. Nope, telling the truth, it doesn't want to come out. So it's very simple. There's grooves in the side. And you just put your pin through there. I'll turn it over. Aim it now. You notice I'm not touching. Let's see if I can turn my hand. I'm not actually touching my project because I don't want the heat on my ultra suede. Now I'm going to put pressure on this pin, get a little closer, a lot of pressure on my pin, and lift up. Now that one was stuck in there really good because I jammed it in there. But that is how you solve any problem you want. And those are basically the techniques to use for doing the glue on and the hot affix. Now the next thing is, let's say that we need a sew on. I'm going to put that there. And as long as I got the hot fix gun going, We're going to put a couple in before and a couple after. You might want to sew these on first, so I'm doing this kind of backwards. Oops. Now, if for some reason the rhinestone doesn't fit in your wand, it might be an acrylic. And acrylics don't necessarily fit in the wands as well as the other ones do. You notice a few of these are not working. That's a 16. Sometimes, because if some of them are molded, they're not as perfect as the quality rhinestones, and you're going to get those problems. Just know that it can happen. Okay, I have my thread. Now, this is another interesting thing where you get to make the decision. I have a tendency to go with white thread with my sew-on stones. This one, since I'm on green, I probably should use a green thread. And then there is the train of thought that says you really need to use the transparent thread. This is another spot where something and I don't get along. Transparent thread and I don't get along at all. It's like fishing wire, and it's tangly, it's hard to see, it's hard to work with, and it's very hard to tie off. And that's another thing that we need to discuss too. But so visuality, we're going to use white on here. And there's no big secret to this. Put your thumb on the middle of your stone where you want it. You should start at the top and go down. Now you notice I did not go through the stone. I went beside the stone, underneath where that hole is going to be. And of course my thread's going to mess up on me. I don't know if you can see it, but there's where my tail is. And I'm going to trim that off a little bit, but make sure I don't cut the knot. And the reason for this is this kind of seals my thread. It keeps it from pulling back through and up through my stone when I take that next first stitch actually into the stone. Ouch. And simply thread it on. And now I'll hold it down. Some people use, and now you can just do a loop around. You can just go in and out. I'm catching the fabric there and just coming up back through the hole. Sometimes you won't be able to do this. Sometimes you will have to go all the way down through and then come back up from the bottom side. And my thread is not cooperating. Now you notice that stone just came off right there? It's because I didn't have enough glue on it. Remember I told you that there wasn't enough glue there. And just 2 or 3 stitches each side of the hole of the point. Usually there's a point that you have to go around. Get them as tight as possible. And then 2 things you can do again. This is your choice. You can tie this off on the back side. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to run along here underneath that stone. And with your fingers you can feel where it's at. It's kind of like sewing a button on. If you don't have that technique in your toolbox, then time to learn. Sew it. Okay, I'm missing the hole. Occasionally you'll get one of these sew-on stones that is cracked on the end, and if it's cracked, you're not going to be able to use it. You could glue it. You can see if that'll work. Some places will, okay, I'm going to turn this around so I can work the other way, so I can work on this side of it. Some places will put a dot of glue on the back side of these stones when they, even though they're sewing them on. And again, that's personal preference. One thing I have found that is after a period of time, and we're talking like 2 years or so, that glue is going to eat the backing that's on these, that silver backing, and the backing itself will come loose from the stone. So what you'll see is you will see the dab of glue, the clearness of the glue, and a chunk of that silver backing. But the stone will come off, and there will be now a visual hole in that stone, and it will be useless, and you'll have to replace it. So I'm going to come down and tie this off. And it's just very simple. Go through your stitching and loop through your thread. If you feel better about it, there's a technique where you can wrap your needle around your thread a couple times and then go back up through. I always go back up through anyway. I always cut off. I tie off on the back side, but I cut off on the front side. That's my technique. If you don't like it, don't use it. Do your own. And my stone is on there. There are some people that when they put the applique on, they know that they're going to rhinestone down through the center, and especially if they're going to use something big and gaudy, they will only stitch down through the center of that applique and then put the big stones right over the top of that stitching. And this is just something you choose how you want to do it. Now if you give me a couple seconds, I'll have the rest of this rhinestone and you can see what it looks like completed. Alrighty, through the magic of time stop video, we stopped. I finished this off and I cheated. These are just kind of laid out. I didn't really sew them down. But I just wanted to give you a visual of what the finished product could look like. Now you continue this on with the sleeves, the back, create something, where these, meet in the back. You want to put something there. You can size these down to do on your collar if you want. If you have cuffs, you can do just one little piece of it if you like. Just anything that puts the whole outfit together. This is one of the outfits that one of my customers made, and you can see how she just used the applique, the rhinestones as a nice little accent, because this actually closes up when the rider is riding, is wearing it, but sometimes it expands to go across the hips when she's riding. So instead of just having blah across the back, we've got this cute little applique. And now this is something different. It came out a couple of years ago. This is called Rhinestones by the Yard. It is iron on. You can cut it lengthwise, crosswise, however you want to use it. It does come 4 across just like this. And this is simply ironed on. It'll go around soft curves, but it won't do sharp curves. And as you see, she just simply brought it together in the front. A few little, these actually look like some trim that she was able to find someone and glued on. A little bit of rhinestones to the collar. And she's got a really cute outfit for a very economical amount. Okay, and that concludes this DVD. I hope I've been able to help you out. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me at showclothes01@hotmail.com. And I'm always looking for more ideas. So if you have ideas, please feel free to contact me. And like I said, I really am here to help you create your own show clothing.